Well, how about we get started, everyone, and hopefully people will join us, be fashionably late. So I'm Kathy Dugan. I'm the director of the Cleveland Law Library, and we have partnered with Cleveland Public Library to bring Angela Baldree in. Would our CPL colleagues like to introduce themselves?
Hi, I'm Steve Capuzzo. I'm the subject department manager at the Cleveland Public Library Social Sciences Department in downtown Cleveland. I'm pretty new to the department, and I'm happy to be rekindling this partnership with the law library to do these book discussions. Thank you all for being here.
All right, and my name is Mike Deneen, and I am a public service associate here in the social science department here at the main Cleveland Public Library. I work with Steve, and very excited. I'm even newer than Steve. I started here in November after having worked in our branches before that. And this is sort of my first book discussion as a part of a staff downtown. So I'm very excited about it. So I'm glad to be here and looking forward to it.
So, and our two libraries are very, very happy to welcome Angela Baldree. She is a former colleague and a friend of mine. She is a longtime librarian who recently retired from the Franklin County Law Library, but she has worked in the Lake County Law Library and at the Columbus Metropolitan System, is my understanding, long time ago.
Grandview Heights.
Grandview.
Yeah.
And so she's now on her second career. Aside from her love of Cleveland sports and great deal of travel, she has now become the owner of a small publishing house. And she has written her first novel. It's a historical fiction entitled Your Brother. And we do encourage everyone to ask questions of the author about her process or the book itself. And the CPL librarians and I have a few seed questions. So if you don't all mind, I'll get us started, okay? So why did you decide to write this book, Angela?
So let me go back a little bit. In 2019, I received a fishing tackle box full of letters from a cousin. And the letters were letters from my great uncles to each other during World War II. So my grandmother, an Italian immigrant family in Fairmont, West Virginia, if anybody's familiar, there were 11 kids in the family, 6 boys, 5 girls. And 4 of the brothers fought overseas, 2 stayed home. One was the eldest. He had a family. He did register for the draft, but kept getting deferred because of his family. The other one was one of the younger brothers. He was deaf in one ear, so he was deemed 4F. So, like I said, I received this fishing tackle box. It contained letters from 5 of the brothers, the older brother that stayed home and the 4 that were fighting. And then COVID hit, and the library got shut down, and I was home with, barely anything to do. So I decided to get the letters out. I put them in order. I transcribed them. I got archival sleeves so we could save them. Eventually, the family donated them to the state archives in Charleston, West Virginia. But after I had done all that, I just thought I got to do more. I want to tell this story. We don't have letters like this anymore. And I just decided to write a novel around the letters because they just really inspired me.
Letter writing is kind of a lost art these days, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And thank you notes.
Oh, I know. I still do thank you notes. My mother drilled that into me.
Yeah, me too. So was it an arduous process or joyous or?
I don't know. It just kind of became, I don't know how to explain it. You ask about the process. I would not recommend the process that I went through. I don't know that I knew I was writing a book. I think I just wanted more information. And so I started researching and calling family members. And my uncle Nick, he was a glider. He was the glider infantry that was attached to the 101st Airborne out of Fort Bragg. He was D-Day +1. His unit actually had a book that one of the guys wrote called Let's Go. and I was able to get a copy of that book. And so I really had the most information about Nick. And so what I did was I put Nick's letters in order. I pulled his letters out, put them in order, and I wrote his story. And then I went to the other brothers and I did the same thing. So I didn't write from the beginning to the end. I wrote 4 individual stories, and then I had to go back and put them together and write the paragraphs, the transition chapters to put everything together. I wouldn't recommend doing that if you ever write a book, but that was kind of, like I said, I didn't really know what I was doing as I was doing it, but that's how it happened, I guess.
Well, then for you and everyone else, did the process of breaking it up by brother help everyone to understand who was where, what they were doing, what danger they were in? It did me, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, that was my intention. I got some early feedback. I think early drafts, I would just start a new, I don't want to say there wasn't enough transition. So because I had Nick completely written and Lou completely written, when you go from brother to brother to brother and you come back to another brother, the readers were forgetting where they were from. So I had to add some additional transition at the beginning of each chapter to remind people where that particular brother was in that given time.
Anyone else want to comment on that in your reading of the novel?
I feel like the chart at the beginning with like the family tree, I kept referring to that. I was like, okay, Jeannie's the youngest one. So like that, if I didn't have that, I would have been lost. But like,
and that was another, that was another early reader suggestion. It's a huge family. I didn't want to cut members of the family. So the family tree at the beginning and the end, I thought would help that situation.
And speaking of family, have you gotten much feedback from family about this book?
Yeah, not a lot. I mean, they've all bought it. I don't, I haven't gotten any complaints. Let's put it that way. I haven't gotten any complaints. So there's not a lot. Obviously, that whole generation is gone. The brothers and the sisters are all gone. And their children are, like I said, the cousin that gave me the letters is 85 right now. So we're starting to lose that next generation. So, but they all, I think they've all read it. They've all bought it.
Got you.
I had a question. So I know in the past, I know Ken Burns said this once explicitly, and I've heard it from a couple of people. He said there's a couple of different types of World War II vets. There's the ones who come home and they'll tell their story at the barber shop and everywhere. They'll just regale people with tales of their time abroad. And then there's the ones who kind of put that away in their mind, do not talk about it, and they have to be pried open, because the memories were so early for them that they don't want to deal with it. Some says you had the letters from your family where the brothers fit into that spectrum.
They definitely did not talk about it. And I have a couple anecdotes to highlight that. So Tony was, if you remember in the book, Tony was actually in the CCC when the World War broke out. He was in Utah. I asked somebody why he was in Utah. I asked a family member why he was in Utah, and nobody seemed to know. There was a theory that somebody had heard that the CCC only sent. They tried to put their people close to home unless they were considered a flight risk. So why was Tony in Utah and not West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio? I don't know. I spoke to his daughter and asked that question. I said, why was he in Utah? She didn't even know he had been in the CCC, let alone in Utah. So I, being the librarian that I am, I found a book called The CCC in Utah and had it shipped to Columbus. There were about 150 camps in Utah. I just picked one that, I thought sounded fun, but Yeah, they definitely didn't talk about it. Nick, when I was in high school, I think my senior year of high school, I had to do a project where I had to interview a World War II veteran. I interviewed Nick and Lou. I don't have the paper. Obviously, I threw it away. And I don't really remember much of it because it was homework. I'm of course beating myself up over that now. I really don't remember anything that Lou told me. I do remember Nick telling me about being a POW. I remember him telling me he was tied to a table leg in a basement of a house, and that they used whatever they could to catch water to drink. But that is all I remember of that interview. But yeah, they just didn't talk about it. That's why I'm calling it historical fiction, because really I had to make up most of it.
And was that easy to do, make up stories, or was it hard, or?
No, I think it was easy. Yeah, I just kind of filled in the blanks. I will tell you, like with Lou, the part about Lou getting injured and losing his fingernails and finding out that he only had one kidney, that is a true story. I don't know if he was in a foxhole, but that is a true story. He was sent home early. If they had ever known that he only had one kidney, he would have never been sent overseas, obviously. Tony's story is almost completely made up. Cheeny's story is made up. I just really went off the letters. I used what they wrote and kind of filled in some more. Cheeny was a ladies' man. Those are the stories everybody told me about Cheeny. He had a million girlfriends. He's, if you look at his picture, he's the most handsome of all of them. He was the superstar of the family. He never worked in the mines. He was supposed to be a doctor. He was supposed to be the savior of the family. And so I just, made him a ladies' man and gave him a lot of girlfriends.
You mentioned the mines. I thought there was a distinct portrayal of negativity associated with working in the mines. And of course, the fallout, I think, from illnesses and whatnot that we all know about, from working there for long term. Was that intentional, or?
Yeah. Nobody, my entire family is coal miners. And that period of time, the story about Kingmont being landlocked, was absolutely true. The miners could only get in and out of Kingmont through the railroad or the river, and they were paid in script, so they had to pay the company store in script and were reliant on them exclusively. So the miners kind of got fed up with that, and they did in fact use their own pickaxes and shovels and built the road that is still there to get in and out of Kingmont so they could access other parts of the state. Yeah, that's absolutely true. On the other hand, the part about the ballparks is also true. So the mine owners did help the miners build that ballpark as sort of a camaraderie. They were proud of the baseball team. So yeah, I guess there's both sides to that.
Yeah, and I mean, you touched on it. You didn't focus on it. There was a book discussion that the Cleveland Public Library and our library had a few years ago about coal mines on the prairie back in Illinois, and it was more graphic. It was
Okay.
very, it explained all of the problems and the health issues and, the ruling and, work and everything. So I thought that was one of those sidelines that you.
Yeah. The story about Nick leaving the mine after a year, or not Nick, I'm sorry, Tony, the reason he went to the CCC is true. That is a true story that I was told that, after 1 year, he's like, I'm done. He cashed in his paycheck. He took his week's vacation and got the heck out of there. Lou left the mines early to join the army. I can tell you that Rocco's entire life was affected by the fact that he had to leave school at 14 and go work in the mines. He was probably the smartest of all the brothers. Could have done, I mean, he did everything in the world. He painted, he he made wine, he built things, he invented things. I have a ton of his things that he's, household things that he made at the time to make life easier for them. And the resentment that he felt for being forced to go to the mines stayed with him his whole life. His son and daughter will tell you that for sure. So yeah, it wasn't a pleasant experience for any of them.
I had a question on the mines, because I thought maybe I misremember history. Were they unionized at this mine at all by the 1940s? Because
they were, in fact, my other great grandfather, my grandfather's father, was instrumental in bringing the union to Kingmont. That's a story I haven't told yet, but they were in fact unionized. Yes,
because I was surprised that Sam, being pretty much killed on the job. You mentioned they got no money for that, and I
don't know that. That's the fiction part. I don't know that.
Okay, yeah, because I would have thought by the 1940s they would have got, because the script and all that was from 1920s. You had Made One and all that, and then
right
when FDR came in, it was my understanding that it was still a dirty, horrible job by the 1940s, but at least there was, they were getting paid better, and there were some modest conditions better. And somebody gets getting killed, I would think you'd get something for that.
There's no record that he got anything.
Okay.
So I don't know that. And that part I did in fact make up.
Oh, okay.
And I do know, I believe the boys were making more in the mines than they were in the army, which is why it was harder on Maria during the war, because she wasn't getting as much money from the sons as she had been when they were in the mines. So
if that makes sense, because they were getting paid better, albeit still extremely dangerous and
still horrible condition. Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, Angela, but you said that's a story I haven't told yet. So, I'm going to jump ahead. Are you thinking of another book?
Well, I'm actually writing about the sisters right now. I think my plan is to write 3 books. The brothers, the sisters, and then my grandfather's family, the Bellatas. So when you read the book, it starts on Pearl Harbor Day. They're having family dinner, obviously. And my grandfather's birthday is actually Pearl Harbor Day. So the way I opened it is that my grandmother is bringing him home for family dinner because it's his birthday. So, they knew each other. They lived they both lived in the same coal mining town. Both families did. So yeah, I'm thinking there might be a story there with the paternal side of the family.
And you mentioned Pearl Harbor Day. I was going to ask everyone, including you. I've been to the Arizona Memorial. I've been to Pearl Harbor. It's incredibly moving and, just really makes you pause. So how about you? Have you been there? Have our audience members been?
Not yet.
Well, I've been there, although the interesting side bit, whose birthday is also on December 7th, fictional Italian-American, Vito Corleone.
I did not
at the end of
that.
Godfather 2, remember when Sonny comes in, like they bomb Pearl Harbor on Pop's birthday. The nervous. So yeah, there
interesting.
You go. So, yeah, I have been to the memorial. Yeah, it's a very interesting, somber thing there.
Yeah,
obviously changed a lot of lives. Obviously, everybody remembers where they were that day because my parents were around, and it was obviously huge. There's not many left who remember it now. So.
Yeah. I don't know if you ever watched the new versions of the Hawaii Five-0 shows, and they had a character whose grandfather was killed. And so they focus a couple issues of the show on that, and it's very, very done well.
Interesting. Okay.
So anybody else share memories have gone to, Hawaii and the Arizona Memorial?
I've been to Hawaii, but I never went to the memorial. I think my parents went to that and I did something else. I was in high school at the time.
Yeah. We're so dumb in high school. What's wrong with us?
Well, my parents took us to every Civil War battlefield and everything else. So we also went to a lot of World War II sites. And speaking of World War II, has anyone been to the World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C., which is incredible. Very, very, tear-jerking. Anyone like to comment? Mike?
Yes,
I'm
can you hear
not
me all
sure.
right?
I'm not. Oh, yeah. I'm not sure if
Oh,
I have.
I apologize.
Go ahead, Mike Reiki.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I haven't been to the one in Washington, D.C., but I was going to chime in and that I did go to the one in New Orleans.
Me
And if
too.
you had
yeah.
opportunity there, oh, that is exceptional. And I originally went there about 10 years ago, and it was amazing then. And since then, it's at least doubled or tripled in size.
Right.
And you could literally spend weeks in there and get lost in there. It's just exceptional. And my wife, who is not much of a history buff or military buff about that, I was dragging her kicking and screaming to it, and she loved it and just was absorbed in. And why I was participating today is that I haven't read the book, but I definitely intend on getting the book so I can read it. The small stories that they would have and small captions along the trail that you would walk through, you would just get immersed in these pictures of or small brief stories about a sailor or a military individual that lost their life, and those stories in it themselves could be a fantastic movie, and it seems like Hollywood, they just keep on overturning the same stories over and over and over again. And it's like there are so many incredible stories that you could write about these people who served in the military, and they just overlook that. But I'm sorry, probably spoke a little bit more than I needed to on this, but definitely recommend that if you get down to New Orleans. It's phenomenal.
I was recently there.
Do you remember? Oh, I'm sorry, because I forget. I know there's a reason. Why is that in New Orleans? Because it seems like an interesting place for the museum to be, but I know there's a reason.
Myself, I do not know.
I don't know either.
And I thought the same thing. All I do know is I think, and I could be wrong, it may have started with some of the boats that they were using, even some of the boats that they were using to, it escapes my terminology here.
I just found the
landing
answer.
craft. The landing craft that they were using. And I think that was the impetus to start that museum, and it just grew from there.
And you are right. According to Google and the National World War II Museum site, New Orleans is the home of the LCVP, or the Higgins boat, which was the landing craft that took U.S. soldiers to shore in every major amphibious assault of the war. So you are really good, Mike.
Blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. I just lucky that. But I think I read that somewhere else, and I'm telling you, it is amazing. They have a particular room for the Battle of Bastogne, and they do it in a sense where they try to make it feel like you're in Bastogne, with trees and snow covered, and they'll have stories as you walk through, and it's just if you ever saw Band of Brothers, it just really brings it to life. So, but that's all I got. So.
It's interesting that you said that. I have a really good friend who is an author, much more established than I am. She's got 2 detective series, but she every once in a while will do a standalone book. And she has a new book coming out in April. I just got the advanced copy of it, called Max's War. And it is about the Ritchie boys, which most people haven't heard of. So the Ritchie boys were Jewish German boys, and they trained at Camp Ritchie in Maryland. That was really the beginning of the NSA. They learned how to interrogate POWs, and they were sent over. Max in her book is actually embedded with the 101st Airborne to get intelligence. But at the end of her book, she says there's so many World War II stories. This is why people are so fascinated with it. We could fill libraries with just World War II stories. But like you said, this is a different take on it. The Ritchie boys is a take that we really haven't seen very much. The rumor is her father-in-law was a Ritchie boy, but she's never been able to verify that. But I recommend that if anybody sees that after April.
Can you share the author's name with us?
Yeah, Libby Fisher Hellman. Hellmann.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because if people have enjoyed your book, they would certainly enjoy hers and
Yeah,
maybe the
she's
series.
yeah. Oh yeah, her series. She's got a like a it's two women detectives that are in the series, but her standalone books. One of them takes place in Cuba. One of them takes place in Vietnam. One of them takes place during the 1968 Democratic Convention in Chicago. So she's a history buff too. Her standalone books really do a lot of research and all different time periods.
So I wonder if she traveled all those places before she
Actually,
wrote about them.
So actually, I met her in Cuba. We were on a trip together in Cuba, and I helped her. We hit it off instantly. I helped her do research, and she dedicated the book to me. And then we went to Vietnam together on a 4-week trip, and we researched the book there and would talk about plot lines and everything. So that one got dedicated to me as well.
And I noticed in this book that, there was a lot of travel involved. Have you, because of writing this book, went to or visited some of those places, or had you already been there and therefore you could describe it in greater detail?
I had not been there while I was writing it because a lot of it was written during COVID. So I was kind of homebound. Since I wrote it, the only place I've been is the Palazzo where Nick was stationed when the bomb fell on the roof and he had to escape pretty quickly. I was able to find that in Naples a couple years ago when I was there. I don't think I've been to any of the other sites. I do want to go to St. Mary Glace eventually, where the D-Day, where the paratroopers came in. I do want to see that. I know there's a great museum there as well, but I haven't made it yet.
Have you been to Normandy? The Normandy?
I haven't. No.
Oh, I have. So
yeah, I need to do that.
Anyone else? I've been there.
No, I envy you though. That would be amazing.
Yeah, it was quite a trip. Amazing, actually. So my thought as I was reading this, and I love to travel like you do, Angela, but I was thinking, did these soldiers, would they have rather been home?
Oh, yeah.
As opposed to seeing the world,
No, they would have rather been home. And I know they didn't go anywhere afterward. I know that Nick, his unit had a reunion every year. They would go to one of the guys' houses. They would rotate. And I know that Tony and Minnie did go back to Germany a couple times to see her family, but these guys did not travel after the war.
Gotcha. Were you going to add something, Mike? Deanan?
Oh, not on the war part. I did have a different question now.
Sure.
I was curious because I learned this years ago about because I think the average person, I think West Virginia, and they think of the Scotch-Irish mountaineer, the mountain people. The general public isn't aware of there being a sizable Italian population in West Virginia.
Yeah.
And
so
I'm curious. Yeah, I'm just curious how you feel that immigrant experience was for your family as compared to if they'd lived in a major city, New York or Boston or Cleveland.
Well, it's interesting. There were in the early 1900s, there were 17,000 immigrants in West Virginia, and 40% of them were Italian. There were so many Italian immigrants at the start of the 20th century. There was actually an Italian consulate in northern West Virginia. I don't know what city off the top of my head, but the Italian immigrants in West Virginia was huge. In Fairmont, it's probably still to this day, I would say it's more than 50% Italian. The information about the padrones the mine owners would pay to go back to Italy and recruit more workers to come over. That's absolutely true. I'm pretty sure that's how Sam got here. I think there were already relatives here that brought him over. The mine owners preferred the Italians because they worked hard. They didn't really drink on the job. The Italians saw coal as just another crop that needed to be harvested. It was a lot of work. I will say I think you asked me at one point, Kathy, if I was aware of the treatment of Italians, like Lou thinking when he came home from the war that he would be hired at the telephone company, only to be told we don't hire Italians. And
And the housing issues too that they experienced.
I will tell you, it hasn't really ended. My uncle just a few years ago was hired to do a job, and when he showed up, the person who hired him said, well, I didn't know you were Italian, I don't hire Italians, and he left. I mean, that was in the 21st century.
Gosh, and the immigrants took so much effort and strength to get here. I mean, if the 120 miles is true, and coming steerage to Ellis Island, I mean, they really wanted to be here, and then to be rejected when they get here.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, you have to think how bad was it for them to go through. I mean, she did that 120 miles with 3 children under 8, Yeah. I mean, Nikki was a baby. She had to carry him. At least Rocco and Aunt Katie could walk. Yeah. Just unbelievable circumstances would bring them here.
My kids would have never done that.
Yeah.
This is going back to the West Virginia connection.
Mm-hmm.
I just watched a movie this past Christmas season. It's called Feast of the Seven Fishes. And
That's filmed in
thought
Fairmont.
It says it was filmed there, and I thought it was taking place there. So
oh my God,
interesting.
That film is my childhood. The guy that wrote it, I think, is from Fairmont. I think I read that. But oh my gosh, that movie just that is exactly what Fairmont looked like when I was a child. Because I lived there in the summers. That was my second home, and I recommend that movie to anybody.
That's great.
So, back to World War II. Do you think anyone in this call that any other families had as many sons in the war? And do you think that they were as scared as Sam and Maria for their children to come home safely? Or do you think that they lost some, regrettably during the war?
Well, if you remember in Saving Private Ryan, that was the exact same situation. And it was because of that family that the law did change. So now that wouldn't be a case where you would have 4 brothers in active duty. But at that time, I think that was absolutely the norm.
Do we know the statute for the lawyers online that's okay? I don't either.
I'd love to know. Yeah, if somebody finds that out, let me know.
I thought it was more based on the Sullivan brothers that were on commission on the same boat, or on the same boat that was actually the boat that delivered the atomic bomb.
So I thought it was Saving Private Ryan brothers, but I don't know.
I could be wrong on that.
Okay.
But,
it could be a combination of all of them, because especially back then there were so many large families to begin with, and then I mean, I'm sure there were lots of families in that situation where you had 3, 4, 5 sons in the war.
I agree. And the one that it always reminded me quite well is, believe it or not, in the movie The Jaws, which I'm sure we probably all saw, which the captain refers to how he was in that boat. That's the specific boat that was a real life situation, and that was the
Indianapolis.
Sullivan. Correct. There were 4 brothers, the Sullivans, that were on the boat, and they apparently all perished.
All right. I'm gonna have to look this up. Okay.
And I just did a quick Google, and I can't find the answer to my own question yet. So, yes, you heard a librarian say I used Google.
You said yet, but you said yet. You'll get it.
Yeah. So, let's see. Interestingly, there were a few things. I mean, I knew about Victory Gardens and I knew what scripts were, but I wonder if you or our readers learned anything new. Like, did you know about donut dollies or the shot tower, which I found fascinating? We all know probably what the throne room is. Didn't know what a hotbed was. Anybody else find these things fascinating?
I learned so much.
My dad was from that. My dad was born in 1930, so he thought he was going to be in the war, but it ended before, he's still only 15. So on his 17th birthday, he took my tearful grandmother to the recruiting station. She signed him over to join the army, and he had brothers who were in there. So I've heard all the World War II stuff. I grew up with it. The hot cot thing is still going today, because I had a friend who went to Annapolis at my old job, and on those aircraft carriers, there's thousands of I call them staff sailors on there, and they do sleep in rotation, like it's hot.
Really?
It's because there's not enough. There's only beds for half or a third of the thing, so that's still going on today, especially in the Navy. That's not uncommon, but
That's
just
funny.
the way, all the stuff, all the stories you heard, the Victory Gardens, the recycling, the ration. People hated the rationing, the bad chocolate. You couldn't get much chocolate. The chocolate didn't taste right because my dad was a kid, and but everyone just sacrificed because it was a war, and he did what he had to do. So that's just how it was, and that came true in this book. With your family as well. That's kind of how it was.
I was just at the John and Annie Glenn home down in Muskegum a couple months ago, and they were talking about and I don't know all of this information, but the Lucky Stripes cigarettes, Lucky Strikes,
Right.
the emblem used to be green, but they needed the dye for something else in the war, which is why Lucky Strikes changed to red. So I wrote all this down. I'm gonna put it in with the sisters book because my Aunt Nellie smoked Lucky Strikes. So I was like, oh, that's a really interesting side note.
Yeah, and of course, the dark side of the war. Well, it sounds redundant, but a lot of USO and whatnot. What did they do? They gave away free cigarettes to all the boys. So a lot of them wound up dying long after they came home,
Right.
because nobody knew at the time. So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
they got hooked on the free cigarettes. So yeah, that's one of those little things
I didn't
later
know that.
learned.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they're being patriotic. They were giving out cigarettes to the soldiers, and what could be better than that?
Yeah.
And they knew when they came home they'd be still smoking. So it was a shrewd marketing move.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, during the pandemic, Ohio passed a law where you can't vape in like certain places. And so just the other day, we got a letter saying, don't forget to post your posters, no smoking, no vaping. I'm like, this is like 2.5 years late.
Right.
But oh well, right?
Yeah,
that's funny.
So go ahead.
I was going to ask this. So you mentioned you spent time in Fairmont growing up. What's the most recent you've been there? How recently have you been there?
I was just there December. I'm there all the time. My family.
How would you describe the town? If you can give us an
it's
analogy
very
of somewhere in Ohio.
Oh gosh, I wouldn't even be able to do that. It's very depressed right now.
So it is. I thought I saw on Wikipedia there's like 50. Maybe I saw the wrong place. Like 50,000 people. That seemed larger than I expected it to be.
That's probably true. It's a big town. It's divided by the river. There's an east side and a west side. There's still enough for two high schools. So I would say that's probably true. But it's very depressed right now, and a lot of drugs.
Like what is the industry like since the coal mining went? Is anything there?
There's an FBI building there, where they basically everybody in my family works in the FBI building. They do fingerprinting analysis there. Morgantown, where West Virginia University is 15 miles north of Fairmont. They have a good hospital system and the university system. So there are still a lot of people in Fairmont that are going to Morgantown every day to work. They also had Mylan drugs, which you might have heard. There was let's see, Senator Manchin's daughter was the CEO of Mylan Drugs, and there was a big to do with the diabetic medication and what they were charging and her salary. And so they just got bought by another company, and most of those jobs have now disappeared. So Morgantown's kind of going through a period with that, but basically nothing in Fairmont.
Okay. Yeah, because I know in the book you mentioned that
Westinghouse used to be there. Yeah. I mean, they
Yeah.
had the glass factories, they had Westinghouse, all of
And
that.
you were
They
saying
had
how people were surviving off the pensions, basically.
yeah.
The folks who were still there. So okay.
Yeah.
And I
There was
assume the
Owens.
opioids. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm saying the opioids
No.
were really because that was in Southeast Ohio. It just
Yeah.
became just a thing. I'm sure West Virginia. I'm sure that part of it, West Virginia got it very bad as well.
Yeah, it's a really big problem. Yeah. Yeah, it's very sad.
So I want to lighten it up just a little bit. Sorry, Mike. Did you write the rewrite of Daring Young Man on the Flying Trapeze, or did your relative do that?
No, that was in the book. Let's Go. One of the
Okay.
guys in Nick's unit wrote that. That was
so that wasn't fiction.
No, that's a factual story.
Got you.
That's true. Yeah.
And I just wanted to ask our everyone, when Nick was telling the story about the Germans hiding behind the goats to attack, I'm conjuring up images of the Trojan horse. And the Greeks or whatever hiding in the Trojan horse. Did anyone else see that, or am I crazy?
No.
But, I guess I'm crazy.
Yeah.
No, I think that's very accurate. That too was
Yeah.
in the book. So that I don't know if Nick was in that battle, but that did happen. That was in the book. So
yeah, I think I'd heard that from World War II lore or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Nick's story definitely has more factual information. Although where he was in those stories, I don't really know. The story about him going when they were in Northern Africa and going to get the goat to make the meal, that is a true story. That was a family story that had been passed down. He did actually do that. He did get promoted. I don't know if that was the reason why, but I just combined the two.
And maybe I don't know enough about the military when you just said, when they were all over or whatever, did they get to pick where they went? Were they assigned? Is it, is there some choice about the field in which they go? Like my dad was in, the military in college as an ROTC guy, and he was on tanks and artillery, and he was a trainer, and he taught. I don't even know, he's gone now, whether he was, chose that. Do you know if they can?
I don't know. I kind of made all that up. I know Lou didn't because he was already enlisted. How Nikki became the cook, I don't know. He was actually a barber before the war. That part is true. And he was the de facto barber for his unit. And he did tell family that when he gave the haircuts before D-Day, he felt like he was giving, people their last haircut. That was true. But how the other two got their positions, I don't know.
Gotcha.
I can't necessarily speak to that. I know I come from a military family, but primarily naval side. And I know how they got involved and what they were able to do. But even at their level, when my brothers graduated respectively, the top of their class, they're given the option to choose the plane that they want to fly, but they don't always honor that because you can't have all the best pilots going to the top plane. So they will randomly recycle and put people who are the best pilots in lower planes to do helicopters or multi-engine or something like that. So I don't think, at least in the naval end, you really have much choice where you're going to go. You have some choice, and particularly if you indicated your father was in ROTC and having the ability to maybe choose an area that you want to go into. I think maybe when you enlist, you do, but that's about all I can speak to. I didn't actually do it myself, so.
Yeah, how the two became medics, I have no idea. They had no medical training. Like I said, Cheney was very smart. He was going to go to medical school, but how Tony became a medic, I don't know.
That's
I don't
amazing.
know. Yeah.
I know my dad, he did say, because he was in the Army and this is long ago, late 40s, but the four funniest words in the barracks always were, but my recruiter said blank.
Mike, you
So,
should write this down. You should write a book, like, of all these stories. There is a company now. This young man started it to memorialize his father's stories. I don't know if you've seen it advertised. I think it's a great idea because my mom is very old, but she will remember long time ago, not recent. And the story she remembers, I'm like, I never heard that one before.
Yeah, start recording them.
Yes. So I think you should memorialize yours, Mike.
All
Sounds
right.
like very interesting.
Yeah, well, he spent 2 years in the Alaskan Territory. It wasn't a state yet. That's where he wound up.
Wow.
So, yeah. So I learned all about, the long nights and whatnot, that sort of thing. But the good news is he got out before Korea and they didn't make him go to Korea.
Oh, good.
So,
Yeah.
Which is weird because like Ted Williams had to go back. Some people had to go back who were in World War II and go back to Korea. Not my dad. So anyway, but yeah, there's lots of good, lots of fascinating stories there. And so that's why I like his books, these, see these stories because like I said, when we were kids, these guys were still around. You could,
right.
This was still part of the culture, but now it's freaky. Now the Vietnam guys are older than the World War II guys were when we were kids.
Right.
And the first Gulf War guys are getting up there now too. So yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting to see what's going on back home. You don't get a lot of that. Like that was really important for me to, I was fortunate that Rocco somehow saved the letters that he wrote himself. Whether the brothers brought them back with them, I don't know how he got his own letters back, but to see, the story about buying the lot next door, that absolutely happened. That's still something that they talked about, well, right up until they all died, was buying that lot. They were so proud that they all pulled their money together and extended the lot behind their parents' house. And I still have an aunt and two cousins that live on that extension. So yeah, it's interesting to see what was going on back home.
Gotcha. So are there any additional questions from the audience today? Any thoughts, questions?
The only thing I would say is that I'm definitely looking forward to reading the book based on some of the stories I'm hearing. So
great.
Yeah, I think you'll enjoy it, Mike, very much. And you may learn some things about General Eisenhower that you don't care for. No spoilers there. Okay. Something I did not know, which my dad.
Yeah, that was in that book. They were not impressed with him at all.
Yeah, yeah. So I wanted to leave a little time at the end. So you could tell us a little bit about your publishing house.
So I ended up buying the publishing company from the same cousin who gave me the letters. It's called Trillium Publishing, and the books are all available there. The website is Trilpub, TRILPUB. We have about 7 books right now in the catalog. They all have a West Virginia connection at this point, but I am always looking for new authors. And if anybody has any information or you want to reach out to me, all my contact information is on that website.
And what would you tell people who want to write? Are there any, tidbits or,
just
best practices?
I have no idea what the best practices are. I follow Connie Schultz on Facebook, and she had something on there one day where every day she lights a votive candle and she writes until the candle burns out. I was not that disciplined. I will say I absolutely had a notepad by my bed because I would wake up with ideas, even just a little sentence, and would hurry up and write it down because you never do remember it. And I still do that. I have notes all in my phone from things that keep popping in my head. But I don't just do it. It probably took me two and a half years to get the final version. But I wasn't writing every day. I had a full-time job. So it was just when I found time, I would put something down but I'm really proud of the end result. So it was well worth it.
And are you getting good reception on purchases and book discussions scheduled throughout? You know what I mean? There's
Yeah,
also something in the chat.
Yeah, I just saw that. I don't have an audiobook. I do have an ebook on Amazon. There is an ebook for your Kindle. If you go to Amazon, search it by my name. If you search for your brother, it's hard to there's a lot of other things that come up first, but if you search by my name, the book will come right up. Well, I'm sorry, what did you ask me?
Oh, I said, are you scheduling a lot more book discussions? How's the reception been? Are people, libraries and others buying it? How's it going?
Yeah, I've done about 3 book discussions at libraries here in Lake County. I'm always looking to expand. I've done an Italian festival. I was at a store on Saturday. I was at the West Virginia Military Museum on Veterans Day last year, which is a really nice museum. If anyone, if it's for a private museum, it's an amazing museum. It's in West Virginia. They won't open again until April, I think, but I did an event there on Veterans Day and had a bunch of people come and buy the book and talk. And I did an initial run of 150 and I'm just about out. I just called a printer yesterday to schedule a second run. So I'm pretty excited about that.
And I guess, unless anyone else has a question, tell us about the publishing process. For those who are, clueless, do I self-publish? Do I find one? Do I get an agent?
You can do all of that. I will help if somebody's looking for that. I've got sites where I can hook you up with editors. I edited this book professionally 3 times. Which I would probably do again. I just really wanted to be confident that it was, correct and grammar, spelling, factual, all of that good stuff. You can do it yourself. I designed the cover myself. I went on Canva. They actually have a template for book covers. It was super easy. So you can pay people to help you, or you could do it yourself. It's really whatever you want to do.
Now you said, is it factual for your editors? But was there any fact checking? I mean, this is historical novel.
It is. There was some fact checking. Yeah, there was a little bit of fact checking, but I just wanted it to be, I guess I should have said more consistency, make sure it flowed. Things like that.
So any final thoughts, questions from the audience?
Thank you guys so much. I really
Thank you.
appreciate the opportunity to talk about the book. And
thank you for joining us, Angela. We're very pleased to have you, and I do wish you well in continued events for this book and the future books that are coming. And if you want to come back, you're very welcome.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. I'm going to close the session.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.